All right, welcome everyone to our live Q&A with therapist Sarah Strong. So excited for this. We've had this on the calendar for a couple weeks now and the stoke is high. So welcome Sarah to the Q&A. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
This is great. So we've got some folks who are joining us live, and then I think a bunch are going to be catching the replay. But you and I both have the list of questions that were submitted ahead of time. And if you're on the Zoom right now live, feel free to pop in and ask a question. It's a small group tonight, so that's kind of cool. Uh, Mostly ladies are here, and I think almost everyone is involved in the Wild Goose in some form or another. So that's very cool too. So Sarah, why don't we just start out? Would you mind giving an intro about who you are? If you're listening and you're a dedicated subscriber of our podcast, you may remember we had Sarah on earlier this year. And so welcome back, Sarah, and fill us in. Who is Sarah Strong? What's your story?
I'm Sarah. I'm a licensed clinical social worker based out of Colorado. I've been a therapist for about 10 years, and I own a private practice where I do trail-based therapy. I also offer virtual sessions. Probably half my clients are virtual, and the other half I do just your standard, what you think of as therapy, but we do it out on the trails and walk and talk sessions. So I really try to integrate nature and movement into my mental health work. And I think that there's a lot of overlap in the mental health benefits we think of when we think of running. We also get walking. And then, yeah, I'm also a USCA certified running coach, and sort of my passion is hoping that runners will prioritize their mental health and support their mental self as much as their physical health and their physical self. And I think so much of the training we do and all the things, people are focused on their diet and their sleeping and not necessarily focused on stress management and the mental side of running. So I really try to encourage that and try to help people see that taking care of your mental health actually leads to athletic gains. It doesn't keep us from them.
That's awesome. And we met a year or two ago. I think it was probably 2 years ago now through Bigger Than the Trail. You and I are both ambassadors for that amazing nonprofit. And Wild Goose Trail Festival, which is coming up next week. We're doing some fundraising for them, which is very, very cool. So that'll help some folks get access to cost-free therapy through Bigger Than the Trail.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. Yeah.
Sarah, you want to hop in here with the first question? They're not in any particular order, so we can just kind of go down the list of what people submitted. So the first question we've got from Sarah Kool-Aid, who is on the call tonight. Her question is, what techniques or strategies do you use or recommend for getting through low or tough moments during a 100-mile race? What do you got for
Yeah.
us?
Okay. If we think about mental training or the mental side of things being similar to the physical side of things, right? Like there's nothing new on race day applies to mental strategies and mental techniques too. So, really, anything that you think you might want to do during a race, you're going to be wanting to do during training, and you want to be building those skills because the skills aren't going to necessarily be super effective or work in the moment on race day if your body and brain have not had an opportunity to practice them. So when I say skills generally, thinking about things like breathing exercises or grounding experiences, and I can get into more of them later, but thinking about any of these strategies, they really are focused on like mind body connection and helping us control our focus and control the thoughts that we're paying attention to, the feelings that we're giving space for. And if we haven't throughout training worked on mind body connection and created those like that communication but in ourselves, it's going to be really hard for those skills to be effective. So that's just sort of back, like I just say that because I don't want like to give some skills and then people are like, oh, I've busted this out on race day and it didn't work, right? Anything that we talk about, you really want to practice early and often. So when we think about in the middle of a 100-miler, what skills are going to be helpful, we want to think about the different modes that a brain might be in the middle of a race, right? So if we are in the middle of a race, likely two different parts of our brain are going to be in control. Either our stress response because we are running a very far distance, and our brain that wants to keep us safe and help us survive is very worried that something is wrong and would like us to stop running. So it is going to send us all of the signals that we need to stop running. That's when we're having pains. We're really focused on this is too much, this is too far, I can't do this, right? That real negative stuff, probably stress response. The other mode our brain might be in the middle of a race is what's called the default mode network. This is if you think you're like driving in a car and you're like zoned out and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, where was I for a second, right? That's the default mode network. That comes on all the time when you are running. So being able to know which of these networks you're in can help you decide which strategy you want to use to get out of it. So if I'm in a stress response, I have an activated stress thing happening, I'm probably going to want to do something that's going to activate my parasympathetic nervous system. So things like deep breathing to calm my body down, grounding to really get out of my head and into my body. If I'm in the default mode network, I might just want to kind of trick my brain into thinking about something else. So kind of get out of this weird thing, which sometimes that default mode network can be unhelpful. Like the train of thoughts can be unhelpful. Like we're zoned out, but we're like thinking about all the things that could go wrong, or we're zoned out and we're kind of going this space, right? So we want to get control of that. You might do something like some math problems in your head. So if we're doing complicated higher level thinking, your default mode network and your stress response can't be working, right? Because if we're using our prefrontal cortex, like our thinking part of our brain, those other parts of the brain, the stress response isn't activated, can't be activated when you're thinking clearly. So doing something like a math problem can actually trick your brain into like not being in panic mode a little bit. So yeah, so essentially it's really wanting to learn the different modes that your brain's in and then using that to respond. Okay, do I need to get in my body, help my body feel calm, or do I need to get in my head a little bit and think about something different, control the direction of where my thoughts are?
That is super, super interesting. So, what about if people are wondering, well, how do I practice this during training? Like, do I try to get unhinged and then see if I can use these strategies? Like, what what do you
Right.
recommend for people who want to, obviously we're a week out, so it's a little bit
Right,
last
yes.
minute for the Wild Goose, but looking ahead to maybe some future events, what do you recommend for people for them to practice? What does that look like?
So one of the things that's really cool about these strategies is they're the same strategies that we can apply to all stressful things in life, right? Like life has abundant stress for us. And if we are looking for training opportunities for our stress system, like it really doesn't take too much effort to find them in our day-to-day life, right? A lot of time. So there's that. There's like, ooh, I can try this breathing technique right now while my kid is like screaming and driving me crazy or something, right? Or I'm in traffic and can I count backwards by sevens? And like, does that help me feel better? Right. So just noticing when you're feeling a little bit stressed out or like on edge in your daily life, and then trying a skill and seeing if it makes any difference. And then the other thing, mindfulness. I'll like talk about that till I'm blue in the face. But anything that you're doing with mindfulness, you are one, lowering the cortisol in your body and helping yourself show up to race day like less likely to hit that threshold in terms of like the moment when your brain stops cooperating. And then the other thing is every time you're practicing mindfulness, you are strengthening that mind body connection. So even if like you don't have a ton of time to practice the skills, it's not unlike building your tricep muscles, right? You're lifting the weights, and like we're not going to see those huge muscles after the first week, but like that first day that you did it still matters, right? You're still building those connections, and then the next day it's going to add on to that. And if you didn't do the first day, right, then we're starting. So like every day matters, and yeah, so mindfulness, stress in everyday life, and then visualization. So using visualization now to imagine yourself having that kind of stress response in the race and then responding to it. So one of the really cool things about our brains is that they can create neural networks through visualization just as strong as if you actually did the thing itself. And so you can, through the brain learns the best through repetition. And so through imagining the same sort of scenario over and over and over again, you can help the brain anticipate the experience and then feel what happens when we get to the other side. So you can imagine getting stressed and then doing the breathing, for example, and then now my body feels better.
That is awesome. And I'm thinking about, we just had a Zoom last week with our friends at Chaos Crewing, so they help with crewing and pacing. And I'm thinking about that clinic, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, but these are great things that you can share with your pacer. Where, we talked about in the clinic last week how important it is to talk with your pacers and your crews ahead of time. This is something where you can give them these specific strategies of like, hey, if I am like really spinning out, let's do some math problems. Like literally, like let's run through it.
Yeah. I'll send it to Kim and Kim will get it out to everybody. I have these like flashcards. It's like a little booklet of like 16 mental tricks for in the middle of a race. So again, like, I think these things might not be like, it's like KT tape when it's a week before a race a little bit, right? So like they might not be like the magic thing for your race, but I think everybody should take a look at them and see if there's one or two that you can practice leading up to the race. And yeah, just to like have a skill in your back pocket or like to share with your crew. You can give them these cards and be like, try these with me in the middle of the race and see what happens, right?
Totally. Yes. All right. Let's hop on to the next question here. This is from Richard wants to know, how can I prevent using running this is like a deep question. How can I prevent using running as a way to avoid deep issues I may have? Oh my goodness. Sarah, what do you got for us? Let's unpack this.
Yeah. So that's, like you said, kind of a big question. So here's what comes to mind for me is like one, the mind body connection piece. So like just really tuning in, having some awareness of when am I going out to run? Is it every time I get uncomfortable? Is it every time this one sort of thing comes up? Do I need to go and run? Is it that I can't sit still or be with my thoughts? I have to go and run to be away from those things. Like those would be some things I think I would be trying to pay attention. I think if you're asking the question, there's probably a sense of like, this is happening. So if you're using running, right? So if every time I have an uncomfortable feeling, I go for a run so that I don't have to sit with the uncomfortable feeling, then the way to make sure that we're not doing it is to not go for that run and to sit with that uncomfortable feeling first and challenge ourselves in that way. I mean, that's really, it's like, what if I see that I'm using running to move away from something, then when is that coming up? When am I going to that run? And then can I create a pause there, or can I do something different there so I'm not using running in that way? And that allows too, if we're focused on that mind body connection and asking ourselves, okay, before I go out for this run, why am I going out for this run? Because it's on my schedule and I'm supposed to, because I'm trying to gain my fitness, or because I had a really shitty day at work and I'm in a bad mood and I need to go for this run, right? Okay. All right. That's okay. Sometimes we need to go for a run when we're in a bad mood. What's my level now? Can I take this run easy, or am I going to take this run really hard? Right. And being really honest with yourself. And if we're super stressed and we take a run super hard, we're actually just adding stress on the stress. It doesn't actually help us feel better. So if I'm asking myself before I go for the run, what am I trying to get out of this run? And the answer is stress relief, then I need to take that run slowly, right? And so that could be a way, how do I keep running from being this crutch? Well, I ask myself how I'm using it, and then I'm intentional about that relationship. And then not being afraid of going to therapy, or of, asking people around you if there are some underlying things where you're saying, do I need to pay it? You think I'm using running in this way? Yeah, I think if you have that question, it's worth reaching out and getting support or reflecting on it a little bit.
Yeah, and Sarah, you said, sitting with your feelings. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I go back to that mindfulness piece. Mindfulness is a skill that can really help us learn how to sit when a feeling that we have that comes up is uncomfortable. So we being humans, right? I mentioned earlier, like your brain's primary responsibility is to keep you safe. So if you feel uncomfortable, you feel angry, you feel sad, that oftentimes we're like, I shouldn't feel this way. I should hide this emotion. I should control this emotion. That feels unsafe to us. We think of emotions that we like, that we want to share with others, or that we want to feel as being like happiness and yeah, gratitude, and like that's great, but we keep these other ones to ourselves, or maybe even don't let ourselves feel them. I shouldn't feel this way. This is so silly. And so feeling our feelings means when not saying that to ourselves, right? Not invalidating ourselves. And when something's uncomfortable and we notice, oh, I'm so uncomfortable, I'm about to pick up my phone to look at Instagram, because when I do that, I stop thinking about this, my body feels better, right? There's information in that discomfort. And instead of turning away from it, we should probably turn toward it. Where did this discomfort come from? Where is it in my body? How big is it? And so what's important in this process is we need to be able to, and this is like too much to go into but like generally you want to be able to separate your sensations from your feelings, from your thoughts. So okay, I notice my heart rate has increased, right? So maybe that means I'm anxious, and maybe that means I'm not prepared for this race, and this race is going to be absolutely terrible, and what am I even doing here on race day? Oh no. Or maybe that little like increase in my heart means I'm really excited and I just can't wait to be at the line on race day, right? And so first we just notice the sensations. That's like the first, and that's mindfulness really start, what are you feeling? Quite literally, what are the sensations in your body? Then maybe what are the feelings? What are the emotions? And then what thoughts are we having? And I was talking about this on an Instagram thing yesterday. A lot of times people will tell me that like, I don't like feeling my feelings. That's so bad. Well, what's the feeling you don't like? I don't like having the feeling I'm not good enough. Well, that's a thought and not a feeling, right? And so, okay. So when you have the thought, I'm not good enough, what's the feeling that you're having with that? And the reason that that's important is all related to that stuff I was talking about earlier about knowing which one of are we in stress response? And when we're in stress response, our body is sending signals that kind of have us in this activated sense. Our thoughts are unhelpful. Like I said, the prefrontal cortex gets shut off and you're in a survival mode, and all of the thoughts that you're feeding are just survival based, and they're not they're not taking anything else into account. And so it's very helpful to understand, okay, yes, these thoughts are happening, but I'm also at an 8 out of 10 on my anxiety right now. So I'm not going to spend too much time with those thoughts. I'm going to notice the anxiety piece. So to answer the question, like, how are we sitting with our feelings? It's really trying to notice when it's a thought. And it's like trying to not have judgment about it, which can be really hard. And trying to be what we call like a non-judgmental observer. So I think of it as like a data scientist, data collection, right? So a scientist isn't like, if they're watching a rainwater gauge, right? Like that's too much water in the gauge, right? It's like, it is X millimeters of water, right? Okay. I'm feeling my heart rate went up like this. I felt a pit in my stomach, period, right? There's no judgment there. We're just noticing what's happening for ourselves internally.
That's amazing, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And if you are listening and all that sounds kind of like woo woo or weird or like I've never heard of this, I don't know what she's talking about, but I'm kind of curious. I can tell you from firsthand experience that getting plugged in with therapy will really, really help. I mean, when I first started, Sarah, I've shared my story with you. When I first started therapy a few years ago, all of that, what you just said was like, it was like I was learning to walk, honestly. So, but it's so important. And I appreciate you sharing all that. It's really, really helpful. So if you're listening and you're kind of like, I don't know what's going on, it's okay. It's totally cool. Like there's resources out there to help, and Sarah's for sure at the top of the list if you're looking for some assistance there.
and that's sort of why I say I'm like it's sort of too much for an hour. And I think what's hard about this is like there's so much, and
Yeah.
each of these things on their own, right? Like we could talk about sensations for like for the whole hour, and just tuning into these things that we avoid at all, right? Like there's so much there, and I do know it's heady and woo woo and like all this stuff. And I just think it's really important to know that there's like over 30 years worth of solid evidence, like MRIs and like real good research about the effectiveness of mindfulness, about these about how our ability to understand and respond to our stress system is a performance tool. Like there's decades of research on this. It's not, even though it sounds real weird and woo woo, it is like based in neuroscience. Like I am a scientist at my core, and like all of this stuff, as weird as it sounds, is truly based in brain science.
Yeah, 100%. And I have a background in college athletics. I mean, that was stuff we did all the time, was that sports psych side of things with the mental visualization. So it's definitely really helpful to do. Um, all right, let's keep going because there's a lot of really great questions here. So some of these are kind of similar theme, but we can still go through them all. So the next question is from Michaela. She wants to know how to get out of negative defeatist headspaces during races especially. So a little bit similar to before,
Mm-hmm.
but if you want to touch on that again, go for it, Sarah.
So yeah, a couple of things come up. So first is, thinking about what we just talked about, that a lot of time, or maybe I didn't articulate this well. So a lot of times our thoughts are really feelings that we haven't felt yet. So if we're in like a spiral place with this could go wrong and that could go wrong and this could go wrong and that could go wrong, maybe there's like actually a little bit of anxiety that we pushed down early this morning when we were getting ready for the race, and that anxiety didn't get felt, and so now it's coming up as thoughts. So the best way to deal with thoughts is actually going into the body and feeling. So, okay, I can tell my brain is going here, here, there, and everywhere. I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm just going to see what I feel in my body. Where do I notice some sensations? Or, maybe I'll just try taking 3 deep breaths and see if the energy that I felt in my body just sort of gets a little lower. So getting out of your head and into your body, I think, is like a huge part of that. And then the second piece is like what we can do sort of preemptively, which is really thinking about and identifying some of the fears ahead of time. And that can be like writing a list of like the things that are coming up. And then sometimes when you write them down, you're like, well, okay, I'm not really scared that a pack of bears is going to come running out of the woods and like chase me. So like I can cross that off, and you'll like let yourself let go of some of the things. And then when you've got a solid list, one thing that's helpful is to think, which of these things are in my control, right? The weather, not in my control. The gear I bring, in my control, right? So we take a look at our fears. Are there things that we can just let go of as soon as I put them into writing? I'm not worried. Are there things that I can let go of because I can't control these? So spending a lot of time thinking about it. And then are there places that I can put my energy? And sitting with those fears and looking at them in black and white and saying them out loud before the race can help make them less likely to pop up in the race. Or if they do, you've sort of already spent some time with them. So you're like, yes, when it's like, you're not trained enough, like I've gone through my Strava. I know I've done all these training runs. I'm as trained as I can be. I'm as trained as I've ever been. Right. And so that identifying the fears ahead of time and then kind of challenging them or coming up with what you might say to yourself in the race if they pop up.
That is awesome. That's such a great strategy to write things out. There's definitely, it's powerful to name the things you're afraid of. And again, it can come back to sharing with your pacers and crew. Like if they're aware of the things that's kind of going on in your brain, it could be helpful later on, late in the race. If you do start spiraling out, they might be able to kind of cue into like, oh, well, Kim had mentioned before that she was scared of bears and it's getting dark out. And maybe that is why she's acting kind of weird now that we're going into the night. And by the way, we have had a lot of chats about bears. So I think that is a real fear for some folks. So
Yeah.
we have been doing a lot of bear education here with
And
Sasquatch.
definitely did not mean to dismiss the bear thing,
No,
right?
no, no,
Like
not
it's
at all.
totally right. But it's like, So there's a saying in the therapy world, name it to tame it.
Mm,
And a lot of times when our brain's doing the somersaults and it's doing all the things, sometimes the thoughts are happening so fast that we're like, I know what I'm thinking, but like there's a reason we don't have language to it, right? Because it's so kind of like not real or unhelpful. And then as soon as you start putting it into words and you have to verbalize it, one, you're accessing that prefrontal cortex, you're engaging a different part of the brain. So you're kind of getting out of the bad headspace. And then you're putting language to it. It's just you understand it better. And now you're kind of bigger than it, right? So when it's in your head, it's this like monster. And when it's on the paper in black and white, you're like, oh, that's the thing. I see it, I can think about it, I can understand it and respond to it.
totally. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Let's go to the next question. This is from, let's see what's next. Felicia. Suggestions for when you need to train, but really don't have the energy slash motivation slash drive to get out there and go for a run. That is a great question.
Great question. So there's a lot of different reasons why we might have low motivation during the course of training. So I think the first is always to just, so again, back to that mind body connection. The longer that we're working on that, the more often we're checking in with ourselves and kind of having a sense of what our baseline is and how we feel, the easier it is to answer some of these questions. But I think that like, am I maybe burnt out? Like, is it too much? Do I have too much stress? Do I actually need to take a couple days off? And the reason that I'm having a hard time to motivate is because I'm really feeling stressed. And if I intentionally, proactively, and by my choice, take 3 days off or 2 days off and come back and see what happens, and that can feel much better than 2 days where I'm telling myself I'm supposed to run and then I don't. Which can just be like so shame or guilt inducing and make us feel bad. And so giving yourself permission to take a couple days and see if that helps could be a thing if somebody thinks that could be potentially an issue. Another thing is mood follows action. So if like people wait to feel motivated to get out the door, but you actually have to like get out the door to get the motivation. So I think if you're waiting for motivation, if you're waiting to feel differently, you probably won't. So I think it's, how do I get out the door even when I feel like this? How do I get out the door if motivate, right? And it like, I don't want to, I'm not feeling energized, but I'm going to. So I think not waiting to create a special feeling inside of yourself, but just holding yourself accountable, and doing things like setting alarms, setting your clothes out the night before, scheduling to run with somebody. So there's an accountability factor there. Those can all help. And then the other thing to do, if you're really just like, I just am not feeling it, right? I can't feel, one is like, that's okay too. Like things change. And if you don't want to run, you don't have to run. But sometimes it can be worth revisiting our values and, okay, why am I running? What brought me to running to begin with, right? Well, actually, when I started running, it was filling these buckets, but like those buckets, I don't need fill anymore. Is running still doing something for me, right? And if so, what? And then maybe focusing on those, or how does running tie to my values? Because when we can see, when there's like a greater purpose or a greater why to what we're doing, we're more inclined to get out the door. You're more tied to it. But if it's like, and I think this happens a lot, right? Our relationship with running changes, and that's okay. But it's stopping and saying, okay, well, what is it now? And then how can I connect my values to that?
Well, I'll throw in a follow-up question here, kind of in that same vein. What are some signs of burnout? Do you want to talk about burnout, what that looks like for people to be maybe they're that question resonates with them and maybe it's going a little bit further than like, I don't really feel like it today. It's kind of like a reoccurring thing. How would you describe burnout and what are some signs and what should we be doing if we're feeling that?
Yeah. So burnout is like, if you think about, we all have a stress bucket, and burnout's like when your stress bucket's at the brim and overflowing, right? And we've got, so it can be, so all the things that fill our stress bucket, like physical stress, mental stress, and emotional stress, those are going to be all the things that are going to pour out of the stress bucket. So you might see like low motivation, difficulty focusing, forgetfulness, irritability, not wanting to socialize, turning down social opportunities. It could be not recovering well, not being able to get anything out of your workouts time after time again, right? Like not every workout's going to be great, but if you every workout for multiple weeks is bad, you're not feeling rested after you sleep. So just sort of those feelings overall of like you're not feeling yourself, maybe yeah, physically, emotionally, or mentally, you're just not where you know that you can be. And I think what happens when we're ultra training is, well, isn't that just what happens during peak week, right? Like, isn't this just what happens when we're burning ourselves, or when we're like training like this? Is that what happens? And I think that's the dance that we all play. And it's important, if you really are picking up training and adding running, that you're doing other things to take stress out of your stress bucket. Running, especially when we're like really into training, is often more just a stressor than a stress reliever at these peak weeks during training. And so it's important that at that same time, we're meeting stress with other forms of self-care, because yes, you can train in these huge, incredible ways, like absolutely. But you got to be taking care of the full package.
Awesome. Yeah. And that can be tough sometimes to kind of figure out what exactly is going on, especially if you've kind of gone off the deep end in ultra running and you're surrounded by a lot of ultra runners. I think sometimes that can be a little tricky to not get caught up in it if you're, if you're really feeling a certain type of way and but all your friends are doing something else, it can be a little tricky to find that balance.
100%. And I think, and that's why, like, that mind body connection and that values centered, like just making choices from values place and from a why place, and then making choices and just having that awareness from a mind body connection place, so that you're serving yourself and not serving everybody else, and you're meeting your expectations and your needs, and like not other people's expectations and needs.
All right, let's go to the next question. This is actually from Allie. Allie is on the call tonight. So her question is, what are some strategies to work through end of race jitters? So Allie, is this like are you talking about like you're getting towards the finish line and the last couple miles are ticking off?
Yep, because I don't always know the difference in my body between, am I excited about this or am I having an anxiety attack?
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, Sarah, take it away.
um well, can I like ask some follow-up questions? Is that okay, to just get a little more information?
Totally.
Yeah, so if you're out there and you're feeling something, and then so is there, in that moment, are you thinking it's anxiety? Is that what happens? You start to think like, oh no, I'm feeling anxious right now, and then it kind of spirals, or what typically happens?
A little bit of that. And then it's just the way that my body feels, because my hands start to shake and it just feels very, very like, and I only know this because I've dealt with anxiety for probably my entire life, but it's like, oh, what's going on? Is this adrenaline or am I dying? Who knows?
Yeah. So one thing I think could just be super helpful is choosing that story. Like, choosing that the story is it's adrenaline, and embracing that, and like giving yourself a full narrative when that happens. Ooh, the hands are shaking. You know what that means. Like, it is go time. This is the final, like, right? Like, we've got a whole narrative associated with each of those symptoms that come up, because, or then symptoms isn't even the right word, right? Like each of those things that your body is doing. Because I think you're right. Is it anxiety or is it excitement? It's the same freaking thing. And it's mostly, what's the story that we're telling ourselves in this moment? And you've got that finish line, right? Like, it probably is just that anticipation of what's lying ahead. So that would be my inclination, is to really like do some visualization around it and think about those experiences as they've happened before, and what that feeling is in your body. And then like make that narrative, like as you're visualizing it, like, yeah. And then as I surge with energy, my hands begin to shake, and like, yeah, I would tell yourself just a superhero story, and that's like your magic superhero juice.
I like that. I got to remember that for my Girls on the Run girls too. Superhero juice.
Cool, cool. Awesome. All right. Let's move to the next one. This is another really great question. This is from Jan Bisco. She's a SAS Squad regular. After hip replacement and a year of physical therapy and rehab, I am in a dark rabbit hole. How can I find joy in running again? That's a really great question.
It is a really great question. And I think it's a complicated question. I like, because I'm not sure, like with the dark hole, like, are we still running? Is running just looking different? Those sorts of things. But I think the bit, this is where mindfulness and the tenets of mindfulness can really come in handy, because it's really that piece of embracing the process over the outcome, and that focus on the present moment. So not where I've been and where I want to be, but like, what do I have today? Where can I find the joy today? What is my ability today? And what can I do to make the most out of this? And keeping that present focus. I also think it's fair to explore, what, like I talked about before, we have the why behind running, behind our relationship with running, that might shift over time. Okay, so how did I find joy in running previously? Like, what was it about joy? What was it about running that brought me joy? Right. And if it was like getting to the top of the mountain faster than everyone else, and that's literally not a thing we can do with this hip replacement, then it's fair to say, like, can running still give me that joy that it did? Like, is it fair for me to still be asking that of running? Or do I want to ask of running something different, right? Running now brings me community. Running now brings me opportunities to give back. Running now brings me slow times in nature, right? And like, maybe what it's giving you is different than what it gave you. But I think that question of, how does it, so if the question is, how does running bring me joy? I think, what brings you joy, right? How are you looking for joy? And like, how has running done that before? And how, are there ways you can stay connected to the running community and still get that if it's not the physical act itself, right? But I think there has to be some acceptance of just runners in general, that it is possible our relationship with running will have to change over time for things that aren't in our control, and that's okay. So yeah, I know that's not like the most optimistic answer, I feel like, but it's what's coming up for me.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'd imagine that's probably a scary feeling as well, to be in a transition, where running is starting to look different. I'm wondering, Sarah, do you interact with folks? I'm kind of thinking about like people coming out of injuries and maybe aging athletes as well, like just the shift. Is that a common thing that you talk with folks about?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I think there's so many things. I mean, just stages of life and stress levels and new jobs and new families. I mean, there's so many reasons why somebody's the time they can dedicate or the relationship they can have with running will change over time. And so sometimes it's something really drastic and out of someone's control. Sometimes it's like a small decision that ends up having a bigger impact on running than we realize, right? There are many, many reasons that can happen. And I do talk to people about it a lot. And you're right, it's a scary thing. And I think, like I said, that piece of like, well, what is it? Are there still things that I like here and that I'm benefiting from? But that honest question too, like I just said, I've been injured for 9 months. There has been a period in this 9 months where running just felt like a stressor because I wasn't doing it. But like the injury itself felt like a stressor in all of these ways. And when I was saying, I'm just not running right now, and I was able to kind of walk away from it, like that actually helped. And then I came back, right? And so it's just like right now, every time I think about it, it's a stressor. It's not bringing me joy. And I would like to say I could watch Western States and feel joy, but it just makes me feel FOMO, right? And having that awareness with myself, giving myself what I needed, and then being able to come back to it. And I think that piece is important. Like for some people, it's like getting out there and being with the community and volunteering at every race and surrounding themselves with other runners. And for some people, it's like, I need to walk away because I feel sad when I see other runners. And even though they're my people and I know they love me, like that's just hard for me right now. And that's okay too. And what I would encourage, though, if folks find themselves doing that sort of distancing and isolation piece, I will say, like, for mental health, we do better with community, we do better with support. And so I think it's worth really challenging yourself a little bit and, you know, and asking, could I get something, you know, like really asking yourself why you're walking away. Because sometimes we don't realize how much support we're real, like people want to give us, you know, we think, oh, well, I'm not running, they don't want me around or whatever. And I think, yeah, I think that's a sad thing that happens as people move away from what could be support and resources, and then injury is so isolating, and they feel more isolated. So you know, I think it's important to be honest with yourself. That's where mind body connection comes in again. But I do encourage you to just be aware if you're turning away from supports.
Totally. Yeah, that's kind of like the depression brain winning a little bit, which is always it's always so hard. But that's also why you have community as well. Like if you're plugged into a community, hopefully those people can recognize some of those red flags. And um you know, I've got a friend who will just call me out on it and be like, yo, you're isolating, stop it. You know, so to have those types of people um can be really helpful. So that was really great. I'm glad you mentioned that about the community piece, because it is hard. Like you do, I think there is a tendency of wanting to kind of pull away at some points.
Yeah. Yeah. And like if you need to for a little, you know, but I think really being on, like checking in with yourself and being honest. And like I said, like I took a couple weeks back and then you came back, right? Like I think that sort of thing is really, you want to be intentional about the way that you're disengaging or engaging.
Totally. All right. I'm going to combine the last two questions because they're fairly similar from Silvana. Silvana's she's on the call tonight, and then Peter as well. So Silvana asks, how can I handle my mind in the middle of the race thinking I can't do this if you're going really long, like 50, 60, 100 miles? And it's pretty similar to what Peter's asking. After being on the course for hours, for example, during a night segment, and stuff, in quotes, starts to fall apart, what can one do? So these are pretty similar questions. Basically, I think they're asking when shit hits the fan, what
Yeah.
what can we
What do
do?
we do?
This is a
Uh,
recurring theme. We're getting a
yeah.
lot of this tonight.
So again, you know, like I do think that typically the unhelpful thoughts and like the mind places that we get stuck are really good reminders to get into our body. Another thing I'll say about that too, if like it's mile 80 and your body is like not a great place to be either and like really uncomfortable, you can get out of your head and into your environment. So that could be looking around and finding 5 blue things to look at, 4 red things to look at, 3 green things to look at, right? Or if it's night, you could just shine your light on 5 things, and 4th, right? Just something to look outside and get your brain distracted is one thing that you can do. So I know like the getting into your body invitation does not like necessarily feel great, especially if the negative thought spiral you're in is about like a pain or like an ache. That's a better to get into the environment than your body. But so first thing I would do is just try to get out of your head. Your head, again, your brain is trying to convince you to quit. So any thought that you're going to be having in the middle of the race will be an unhelpful thought coming from a survival based brain, not a brain dedicated to getting you to the finish line. It's just not what it's trying to do. So get out of your head. And then I think ahead of the race, at like mantras and affirmations, developing some of those, practicing them through training, and then using them on race day. So if confidence is a thing, I think that was mentioned. So doing things ahead of the race, like reviewing your Strava and seeing all, or Training Peaks, whatever, reviewing your log and seeing everything you've done, saying some affirmations or positive things about your training, about how prepared you are, and essentially having like some arguments to tell these unhelpful thoughts to get lost. Yeah. And then separating yourself from the thought. So if a thought pops up and it's like this mean, whatever, you can like literally give it a name, like decide who is trying to sabotage your race and give them a name. And then like every time that voice pops up, you like, oh, there they are again, coming to ruin my race. Like I don't have to listen to anything they say, and like really separate them from yourself. Um, because if you're not creating that separation, it becomes like you believe it, it becomes truth. And so as much distancing as we can get from ourselves and the thought, the more control we have over it.
A lot of Jedi mind tricks. I love it, Sarah. I always love telling this story. When I was doing a long FKT last summer, one of my friends who was pacing, she implemented one of those Jedi mind tricks where I was getting really overwhelmed with the miles that were left and my feet were hurting and all the things. And she's like, all right, we're gonna play a little game. I'm like, oh, I don't want to play a game. I just want to wallow in self-pity. And she did the five senses. So she's like, tell me, you can see, you can hear, you can taste, you can touch, you can smell. And after I got to the second one, I was like, oh, damn it, this is working. I can't believe it. But it was really, I was really blown away by like it took 30 seconds to just get out of my head for a second. And of course she knew that, and I knew that when I was, a little bit more with my
Right.
mind. But yeah, it was really, really effective. So I can testify
Yeah.
that what you're saying works.
And I really like encourage you to spend time before the race, like building yourself up and like boosting your confidence and writing some affirmations and looking at yourself in the mirror and telling you good things about yourself. And all of that feels really weird and awkward and uncomfortable because our brains have like decades of these hardwired pathways that are telling us bad things about ourselves. So if you want to have hardwired pathways that tell you good things about yourself, you have to actively construct those. And you have to do them again and again and again and again, which is why I kind of started saying you got to do it all through training. But like also every single one adds up. So I really like part of that lack of confidence or feeling those negative thoughts popping up. The more time we've spent building ourselves up and telling ourselves how awesome we are, the quieter that voice is going to be on race day.
Totally. And I think it really just kind of reiterate what you're saying is that like the whole mental side of running, it really shouldn't be any different than like the nutrition and hydration like that you're practicing and implementing in the months leading up to your race, the miles that you're putting in, the strength training, the time in the gym. It's really not any different. And I'm a race director, so I see it all the time where folks are kind of scrambling like, it's 2 weeks before the race, I gotta try a different gel or get different shoes or whatever. Which is like, okay, good thing you're paying attention to it. But to your point, like it really, it'll help you in the long run to be doing this in the months leading up to it.
Absolutely. And really it does, the more you're doing the stuff during training, not just are the skills going to be better on race day, but truly the more likely you are to show up to the race with a stress bucket that's like able to handle a lot, right? The more you're constantly on top of and addressing your stress, and like the more prepared your body's going to be able to handle not just the physical but the mental stress of training, which I think we see a lot of times. Yeah, it's not just not having the skills, but it's like coming into the race fully stressed that can have an impact too.
That is so huge. And I've seen that firsthand, both as a runner myself and also as a pacer and crew. Like that bucket is gonna get kicked over. I mean, whether it's like a little bit full or all the way to the top, like it is gonna go flying over the course of a race, especially in the ultras. So man, just like if it's your first time going for the 100, you're gonna find out. Like it's kind of the FAFO acronym, fuck around and find out type of thing. But yeah, okay. I want to have you kind of plug your stuff. So this was pinged by Sarah in the chat, which is really great because I wanted to end with this. Can you talk about your courses and workbooks for mental training? Because I know you've got a wealth of resources. And folks, if you're not already following Sarah on Instagram, do yourself a favor and go follow, because she's got so much great content that is online. Like so many things that I've saved, so many of them. I'm like, oh, I'm saving this to come back. But yeah, Sarah, don't, you know, don't be shy. Plug all your stuff to
Yeah,
show people how they can learn and get plugged in.
thanks. Yeah, so I've got this website up, the Trailhead. So it's what I like to think of it as like your trailhead out in the world, where you would go to get resources, to find direction, and to connect with other trail users. And so at the Trailhead, I have a community that's got bi-weekly support groups for people, for runners, just like to chat about life and running. And then regular webinars. And then there's the resources, which I have some courses. So the Race Ready Mindset course, which launches on Monday, is a whole, so it's set up to do exactly what I've talked about today, which is like build the skills. And I give them one at a time, each like a week spaced apart, so that you have a week to practice sensations or you have a week to practice feeling your feelings before we start labeling your thoughts, before we start practicing how we're going to focus our attention, how we're going to focus our attention and what we have control over and things like that. So it's all based on the concept of neuroplasticity, which is that you can rewire your brain to be a more helpful and friendly brain through repetition. And so we go into those modes, the default mode network, the stress response, and your critical thinking, and then how to tell which one you're in and how to use the different skills. So that's like my big course. And then I've got like an injury, webinar coming up that's all about how to prepare your injury toolkit for before you're injured. So when you get injured, you have a mental health action plan all ready to go, who your resources are, how you're going to stay connected to the running community, and even when you're not running, how you're going to reduce your stress even when you can't run, because the worst time to think about that's when we're injured. So yeah, so that it's the if you go to my website, thetrailtherapist.com, and go to mental prep, it'll take you to that website where all of my different webinars and courses and workbooks are available. And then I also do one-to-one mental performance coaching, so giving you exactly the skills for your race and helping you decide what you want to practice and build like an actual training plan for integrating those skills into training.
Awesome. And that is not limited by your location, right?
Correct. So for mental health therapy, I can only work with Coloradans, although that's going to be changing in the next 18 months, which is really exciting. Yeah, so if you're in Colorado, you're looking for therapy, I can work with anyone in the state of Colorado virtually, and people in the Front Range, I can provide in-person trail therapy sessions too. And then for any sports psychology or like mental prep stuff, that can be anybody, anywhere.
Awesome. All right. One last question that came in also from Kool-Aid. This is another one about resources, specifically for someone looking to get into mindfulness. What are some good resources to start with?
Yeah, well, so I shameless plug here that I do have a Run Mindful course that's going to be launching in 2 weeks. So if you wait, I'll be doing that. That's like geared for runners, but also like other great resources, Headspace. So a lot of insurances do cover Headspace, and maybe similar apps. I just happen to know that one. They give discounts all the time. What I like about Headspace is that it has like an intro, like a 7-day intro to mindfulness, which is like very bite-sized, which is perfect. Calm. So both Headspace and Calm cost money. Insight Timer is free. What else? Waking Up, that one costs money. YouTube is a really great place and what I would do, here's what I'd recommend for starting mindfulness. One, I would not do anything longer than 5 minutes when you're starting. I think of it like building up your endurance, right? This is a couch to 5K. So, or a couch to 100, right? Like mindful, we're starting like real easy. And when somebody starts with a 20-minute, tries to like sit still for 20 minutes, they're like, I suck at this. I hate this. I'm never doing this again, right? So a simple 3 minutes something, 5 minutes something, or even just adding a 1 to 3 minute check-in with yourself before each meal. Or if you're commuting, before you get out of the car. So you're just taking a deep breath and maybe checking in head to toe to see if there's any tension in your body, or you're just being still for 1 to 3 minutes. Like just doing that is something, right? You don't even have to go and download an app and start. Just like, I'm going to just pause before I eat my meal. And that is more than most of us do in a 24-hour period, right? Like take a breath and stop and check in with ourselves. It's just go, 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 go. So I would really encourage, that yes, those are resources, and also just start by adding some breaths and adding some stillness or some pause during your day.
Awesome. All right. Well, those are all the questions that came in. Folks who are on the Zoom, this is kind of your last chance if you want to throw anything in there for Sarah before we sign off. And if not, we can wrap up here. So, Sarah, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, this was awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you all. And please, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions, or if there are resources that you think would be helpful that I can put out into the world. I'm happy. I'm just love to do this stuff, love to talk about this stuff. So thank you all for being here.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and we will catch you out on the trails. Until then, keep it squatchy.